Belief in witchcraft has persisted throughout history, etched into the very fabric of our written records. Cultures across the globe have harbored the notion that magic could be wielded as a weapon, a dark force in the hands of those who sought to harm others. In many traditions, the ability to heal with herbs or folk medicines was also branded as witchcraft. Where I come from, the old-timers had a name for it: witchery. They spoke of bad witches who would cast hexes and good witches who could counteract spells, revealing the true nature of their dark opponents. A friend once confided in me a family secret from the days of the Great Depression. His father had told him that his grandmother on his mother's side was believed to be a witch. She was said to have the power to hex a milk cow, turning its milk into blood. I reckon it's not entirely uncommon for a man to think his mother-in-law is a witch. But in this case, the man meant it. In those times and before and in this area of the country, people firmly believed in the power of witchcraft and its potential to wreak havoc on their lives. In poverty-stricken rural communities, the fear of an angry witch hexing your livestock or crops was very real. Families depended on their gardens and animals for survival, and the threat of a curse bringing illness or death to a loved one was terrifying. A witch's hex, in the minds of believers, could spell the ruin of an entire family. The legend of the Bell Witch stands out among these tales, captivating imaginations for over 200 years. Stories of this witch's spirit continue to haunt the present day, leaving an indelible mark on those who encounter them. The story unfolds in what is now Adams, Tennessee, dating back to 1817. A wealthy farmer named John Bell first encountered a strange dog-like apparition in his cornfield. Days later, his son witnessed an enormous, unidentified bird perched on a fence post before it soared into the sky. Next, John's daughter Betsy saw an apparition of a girl swinging from an oak tree branch. Finally, Dean, a slave owned by the Bells, reported seeing a large black dog-like creature at night, which vanished as he reached the porch. Initially, and oddly enough, these sightings didn't alarm the family. However, soon after, unexplained knocking on doors, walls, and floors began. These disturbances persisted for over a year before the Bells mentioned them to anyone outside their home, by which time the activity had become unbearable. The entity then began speaking aloud to the family and any visitors or investigators who came to their home. Betsy was the primary target, enduring slaps, needle pricks, and relentless torment at night. John Bell was particularly despised by the witch, who vowed to take his life. These hauntings lasted for about 5 years, with rampant speculation about the source of the disturbances. Suspicion soon fell on an eccentric townswoman named Kate Batts. Although Mrs. Batts denied any involvement, the townsfolk were quick to accuse her. According to the stories, the witch even embraced the name Kate. What are considered the official accounts of the Bell family's ordeal are found in Martin Van Buren Ingram's book, An Authenticated History of the Famous Bell Witch. This book compiles letters from people who experienced the Bell Witch, including the purported diary of William Bell, John's youngest son. Ingram claimed that the diary's accounts were not to be made public until the last of the original Bell family generation had passed, allowing the full story to finally be told. The tales of the Bell Witch are too numerous to cover in this video. My focus is on one particular story involving former President Andrew Jackson and his supposed encounter with the witch. As someone who views supernatural accounts with curiosity and a grain of salt, I admit this tale seems far-fetched, but it's claimed to be true, so I'll share the account and you can decide for yourself what to believe. The letter comes to Ingram from an attorney named Thomas L. Yancey of Clarksville, Tennessee, and is dated January 1st, 1894. Yancey's grandfather, William Fort, witnessed this strange event and handed the story down. The letter reads, "Dear Sir, in answer to your inquiry as to what I know about the Bell Witch excitement of many years ago, I will state that I was born within 4 miles of the John Bell home, where the witch is said to have disported itself to the terror of many good and pious souls. While quite a young man, I became much interested in the stories my relatives and other people told in regard to the phenomenon, which I had heard repeated from my earliest recollection. Ambitious in my youth to discover the cause and write a history of the affair, I determined to enter into the investigation, and did some 40 years ago undertake the matter, gathering many amusing and strange incidents, but not sufficiently connected and authenticated to justify my purpose. I soon learned that Williams Bell was the only person who had kept a diary of what transpired and had written the facts, leaving the manuscript with his wife or some member of his family at his death. Of course, I was anxious to get the paper, and not being acquainted with Williams Bell's widow, I applied to Squire John Bell, Jr., to know if such manuscript was in existence, and if it could be had for publication. He informed me that his brother had written the facts, etc., regarding the mystery, and that Washington Lowe, a lawyer of Springfield, had applied for it and been refused. He thought, however, he could induce his brother's family to let him have it, and promised to intercede for me. Sometime after this, he told me that he could not get it, that the family refused to let him or anyone have it, and after this I gave up the purpose of writing a book and pursued the investigation no further. However, I remember some very graphic stories told by the old people who visited the scene often, stated as having absolutely occurred, and told in all seriousness by persons whose veracity I could not doubt. My grandfather, Whitmell Fort, told me that he visited the place often during the excitement, meeting with many persons from a distance who came to investigate the witch. Grandfather said he could in no way account for the phenomena. There was no doubt of the fact that something persecuted Miss Betsy Bell terribly after she retired to bed. He went with others to her relief amid her outcries of agony, and they all could not hold the bed covering on her, so powerful was the unseen object in pulling it off. Even could this have been accounted for, the keen ringing sound like that of a hand slapping her jaws when she would scream with pain, and the deep red splotches left on her cheeks, were mysterious beyond comprehension. Grandfather Fort also told me the story of General Jackson's visit to the witch, which was quite amusing to me. The crowds that gathered at Bell's, many coming a long distance, were so large that the house would not accommodate the company. Mr. Bell would not accept any pay for entertaining, and the imposition on the family being a constant thing, was so apparent that parties were made up and went prepared for camping out. So General Jackson's party came from Nashville, with a wagon loaded with a tent, provisions, etc., bent on a good time and much fun investigating the witch. The men were riding on horseback and were following along in the rear of the wagon as they approached near the place, discussing the matter and planning how they were going to do up the witch if it made an exhibition of such pranks as they had heard of. Just then, within a short distance of the house, traveling over a smooth, level piece of road, the wagon halted and stuck fast. The driver popped his whip, whooped, and shouted to the team, and the horses pulled with all of their might, but could not move the wagon an inch. It was dead stuck, as if welded to the earth. General Jackson commanded all men to dismount and put their shoulders to the wheels, and give the wagon a push. The order was promptly obeyed. The driver laid on the lash, and the horses and men did their best, making repeated efforts, but all in vain. It was no go. The wheels were then taken off, one at a time, and examined and found to be all right, revolving easily on the axles. Another trial was made to get away, the driver whipping up the team while the men pushed at the wheels, and still it was no go. All stood off, looking at the wagon in serious meditation, for they were stuck. General Jackson, after a few moments' thought, realizing that they were in a fix, threw up his hands, exclaiming, "By the eternal, boys, it is the witch." Then came the sound of a sharp metallic voice from the bushes saying, "All right, General, let the wagon move on. I will see you again tonight." The men, in bewildered astonishment, looked in every direction to see if they could discover from whence came the strange voice, but could find no explanation to the mystery. General Jackson exclaimed again, "By the eternal, boys, this is worse than fighting the British." The horses then started unexpectedly of their own accord, and the wagon rolled along as light and smoothly as ever. Jackson's party was in no good frame of mind for camping out that night, notwithstanding one of the party was a professional witch layer and boasted much of his power over evil spirits, and was taken along purposely to deal with Kate, as they called the witch. The whole party went to the house for quarters and comfort, and Mr. Bell, recognizing the distinguished character of the leader of the party, was lavishing in courtesies and entertainment. But General Jackson was out with the boys for fun, and witch hunting was one of them for the time. They were expecting Kate to put in an appearance according to promise, and they chose to sit in a room by the light of a tallow candle, waiting for the witch. The witch layer had a big flintlock army or horse pistol, loaded with a silver bullet, which he held steady in hand, keeping a close lookout for Kate. He was a brawny man with long hair, high cheekbones, hawk-bill nose, and fiery eyes. He talked much, entertaining the company with details of his adventures and exhibitions of undaunted courage and success in overcoming witches. He exhibited the tip of a black cat's tail, about 2 inches, telling how he shot the cat with a silver bullet while sitting on a bewitched woman's coffin, and by stroking that cat's tail on his nose, it would flash a light on a witch the darkest night that ever come. The light, however, was not visible to anyone but a magician. The party was highly entertained by the vain stories of this dolt. They flattered his vanity and encouraged his conceit, laughed at his stories, and called him sage, Apollo, oracle, wiseacre, etc. Yet there was an expectancy in the minds of all left from the wagon experience, which made the mage's stories go well, and all kept wide awake till a late hour, when they became weary and drowsy, and rather tired of hearing the warlock detail his exploits. Old Hickory was the first one to let off tension. He commenced yawning and twisting in his chair. Leaning over, he whispered to the man nearest him, "Sam, I'll bet that fellow is an arrant coward. By the eternals, I do wish the thing would come. I want to see him run." The general did not have long to wait. Presently, perfect quiet reigned, and then was heard a noise like dainty footsteps prancing over the floor, and quickly following, the same metallic voice heard in the bushes rang out from one corner of the room, exclaiming, "All right, General, I am on hand ready for business." And then addressing the witch layer, "Now, Mr. Smarty, here I am, shoot." The seer stroked his nose with the cat's tail, leveled his pistol, and pulled the trigger, but it failed to fire. "Try again," exclaimed the witch, which he did with the same result. "Now it's my turn. Look out, you old coward, hypocrite, fraud. I'll teach you a lesson." The next thing, a sound was heard like that of boxing with the open hand, whack, whack, and the oracle tumbled over like lightning had struck him, but he quickly recovered his feet and went capering around the room like a frightened steer, running over everyone in his way, yelling, "Oh, my nose, the devil has got me. Oh, Lordy, he's got me by the nose." Suddenly, as if by its own accord, the door flew open and the witch layer dashed out, and made a beeline for the lane at full speed, yelling every jump. Everybody rushed out under the excitement, expecting the man would be killed. But as far as they could hear up the lane, he was still running and yelling, "Oh, Lordy." Jackson, they say, dropped down on the ground and rolled over and over laughing. By the eternal, boys, I never saw so much fun in all my life. This beats fighting the British. Presently the witch was on hand and joined in the laugh. "Lord Jesus," it exclaimed, "how the old devil did run and beg. I'll bet he won't come here again with his old horse pistol to shoot me." "I guess that's fun enough for tonight, General, and you can go to bed now. I will come tomorrow night and show you another rascal in this crowd." Old Hickory was anxious to stay a week, but his party had enough of that thing. No one knew whose turn would come next, and no inducements could keep them. They spent the next night in Springfield and returned to Nashville the following day. As we come to the end of this incredible tale, it's important to understand that stories change as they are handed down. Though the previous account may be hard to believe, it's part of the lore, holding a special place in the hearts of many. You can find a link to Ingram's book where you can read it for free in the comments below. Today, visitors to Adams, Tennessee, and the surrounding area claim to still experience the Bell Witch. Often when you go looking for something, you find it. For some, there is no doubt that the stories are real, and so are their personal encounters. What are your thoughts? We'd love to read them in the comments. Also, if you're interested in strange stories with some historical flavor and you feel so inclined, how about subscribing to the channel? It'd mean a great deal to us here at Backcountry Spirits. Thanks for watching. We sure do appreciate y'all, and we'll see you in the next one.